This is Michelle, and you're listening to Words with Michelle, the podcast, a show where I sit down and have conversations with influencers on a range of topics, anything from natural hair, employment, discrimination, food, relationships, and everything in between. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. If you want to send me an email, hit me up at michelle@wordsmichelle.com. Thanks for tuning into the latest episode of Words with Michelle, the podcast. You can subscribe and like the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and any other app that you use to listen to your podcast. You can also listen on my blog at wordswithmichelle.com or on my YouTube channel at Words with Michelle. Being a person that enjoys laughing, I'm a huge fan of comedians. They are able to take everyday normal situations and make them funny. I'm such a huge fan of comedy that I actually took a course in university on the politics of comedy. It was honestly one of my favorite classes. One of the comedians that I've been following for years is Jean Paul, a comedian that hails from Trinidad, my parents' birthplace, and a place I love but have only been to only a handful of times. And a few weeks ago, I was happy to chat with him and talk about everything from his comedy, being on breakfast television, and of course, Trinidad. But before we get into the show, I want to let you know that this episode was sponsored by Epigram Consulting Services. If you're an entrepreneur or a micro-entrepreneur in need of leveling up your business, Epigram Consulting can walk you through while teaching you the process of starting or expanding a business with their unique business consulting model. Epigram specializes in product identification, business plans, financial analysis, operations, and marketing. Ready to start or fine-tune your business? Contact Karen at info@epigramconsulting.com. Now back to the show. I thought that this episode would be full of laughs, and it is, but it's also educational, believe it or not. John Paul and I touch upon cancel culture within comedy, Caribana, and Trinidad. He speaks about his absolute love for the island and why he visits every year. I enjoyed this conversation so much. It was informative as well as heartwarming. His accent made me feel like I was in Trinidad talking to my cousins. I don't think he realized how his love for Trinidad made me feel like buying a plane ticket to Trinidad. So I can go on and on about how riveting our convo was, but it's time to start the show. I asked Jean Paul to provide his bio, which he wasn't too interested in doing, because guess what? He's humble. So I strayed away from my regular practice, and I started off the show asking him a few questions just to get to know him. Please welcome Jean Paul to the show. Okay.
Please condense the bio because I have one that sounds like super what's the word I'm looking for? It just sounds so self-absorbed and I'm just like,
You know what? That's what it is. As you know, I hate doing it as well. Like I hate talking about myself because you feel like you're talking about yourself, like you're not a real person. But you do have a body of work and you are known for a lot of things, and we see you. So I mean, we're giving you your flowers, and your flowers already there.
Take
But
it. I'll take it.
why don't you tell me first of all where you're from? Tell me where you're from, number one.
Born in Trinidad, but predominantly grew up in Toronto with a good back and forthing to Trinidad.
Number two, who's your favorite comedian?
Of all time, Eddie Murphy. That's easy. That's a no-brainer. Of all time, Eddie Murphy. Easily. Yeah.
Wow. Eddie Murphy back in the day, or Eddie Murphy now?
Just all together. Like even now, if again, I don't know how many people, most people of this generation know Eddie Murphy from Donkey and from Shrek and all that kind of good stuff. But I think what I still love and appreciate about Eddie Murphy when you see him in interviews, he's still easily probably the most naturally funny, gifted comedian, great sense of timing, great face, likable, charming, great memory, So yeah, I just everything about him, while he may not be actively doing stand-up, he's inactively doing stand-up and still very much a purveyor of the comedic stylings of stand-up. So I dig it. I still dig him a lot.
Okay, nice. Is there any new-ish comedians that you enjoy? Yeah, like,
Oh, of course. I mean, I consider myself a student of the game, so I'd predominantly say as well, my favorites and that have been for probably the last decade and change easily, the Dave Chappelle's, the Chris Rocks, Bill Burr, as well, and I'd probably say right now those are probably my top three guys, and an honorable mention, goes out to always some of the Canadian legends like Russell Peters as well, who's definitely paved the way internationally for a lot of people in Canada as far as comedy goes. Yeah, people like that, and the Wanda Sykes and the Issa Rae, who's not necessarily a comedian, but I still very, very, very much dig the comedy environment,
yeah, she's extremely funny,
Yeah.
so that's cool. So just tell me, how'd you get into comedy then?
Um, I just think comedy for me was just always something that was always going to happen, inevitably. I've always known from as they would say in Trinidad, from small you could talk stupidness. So I knew from a very, very early age that comedy was the direction that I wanted to go in some capacity, whether it was actually stand up, whether it was going to be writing, whether it's going to be writing movies, TV, or something along those lines. I knew comedy was definitely going to be the arena that I landed in, and it was when I was 12. I knew stand up because of Eddie Murphy. When I saw Eddie Murphy, I was like, that's what I'm gonna do, and yeah, that was it.
Okay. So you saw him do what? Was it his comedy specials? Was it Saturday Night Live?
A bit of both. I saw him early on Saturday Night Live, and then it's funny because this is pre-internet, so there was no way to like, hey, let me Google this guy.
Yeah.
This was I actually had to find out who he was and found out that he was a stand-up comedian and bought his cassette tape from his first album. This is before Delirious, which is the one that most people are aware of, where he's wearing the red leather suit. But this one was, I think he was maybe 21, 21, 19, 20, 21, and he recorded an album at a comedy club somewhere in New York. And yeah, I wore that cassette tape out. And yeah, and that was the inception of my comedy journey.
What was your first time on stage like then? Like, what was that like?
The first time on stage wasn't really it wasn't even in a stand-up capacity, in the sense that I chose and decided to do stand-up.
Mhm.
It was a high school event that I got forced onto because they were supposed to be playing music and they couldn't play music, and the only thing that was working was the microphone, and the crowd was getting rowdy, and my friends were like, "This is your big chance." And then they came and they got me from where I was in the high school, and they literally threw me out on stage because I was, allegedly the funniest guy in school, and I basically told jokes until a new amp to play music came up, and that was the watering of the seed that needed to grow, to reinforce, yeah, this is the direction. So it wasn't your traditional stand up where it's like, and I went to an amateur night and I had 3 minutes written. It was just basically again, as they say in Trinidad, baptism by fire. You know what I mean? So
It's funny you say that because that's exactly what I was going to get into. I was going to say, has your background, has it influenced your comedy in any way?
For sure, easily, because a lot of I think what I appreciate more, and you can even tell it from my style. I consider myself, while I consider myself a comedian, my style, if you were to describe it, is a storyteller, and traditionally our people, our ancestors, are storytellers, and I've always been fascinated by the colors and that are painted when our people tell stories, whether it's the sound effects or the actual characters that they're speaking about, or the environment. It's so and being from Toronto, and what I love about Toronto is so eclectic and diverse and mixed, with the exact same thing, with different cultures and religions and politics and all that kind of stuff. So I've on an active journey to continue to blend the two, while let people who don't know about the Caribbean and the West Indies about our culture and about our people and about our spirits and all that kind of good stuff, as well as Toronto. I see Toronto the same way, especially when you come outside of Canada. It's very limited to what they know. So I try to blend the two and just, share a little bit of who I am and what my world looks like. And, hopefully people get an insight into what that looks like, so.
Okay, great. I want to ask actually, I believe you were part of, was it the Nubian Brothers? Sorry.
I was. So here's the funny thing. The first show was like, so what are we in 2024? 2025, April will be 30 years officially that show has been around. So it's been around for 3 decades.
Wow.
Yes, correct. I know I look great. I look fantastic. So, I was at the first show, but I wasn't on the first show as a performer. I was at the first show as an audience member. And
Oh.
how I got to be an audience member is, I happen to be, again, this is pre-internet, pre-social media, so there's no Instagram. You know what I mean? So, I re-bumped into Russell Peters, or he re-bumped into me while I was working at some shifty mall, some sketchy mall, selling shoes. And he's like, "Where you been?" And then he told me about Kenny's show, which the first one was going to be in April of the year that we bumped up into each other. So that would have been
95?
April of 95.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You got to come check this show out." And I'm glad that the universe and God paired us back together, because I don't
No.
think it was a coincidence. I definitely don't think so.
No.
And when I went to see it, it changed everything. And I was like, "Yep, that's we're back."
So
So
wait, did you know Russell Peters before that then? Because you mentioned it.
we've known each other since we were 19. So
Oh, okay.
after the said high school incident that I told you about,
Yeah.
my first time on stage, a teacher, ironically, had come up to me, who was in the auditorium that day, and he's like, you got a bit of a talent. You should probably go to Yuck Yucks and try amateur night.
Oh,
And I had no idea
nice.
what he was talking about, and I went and did
Oh,
amateur night. And then one of the veteran comedians was like, "Hey, you're actually not bad. You should come back and do this." And then I eventually bumped into Russell, because he was the only other young hip hop listening, rap, reggae, listening dude. And so we already had that kind of synergy, and we still to this day have very, very similar senses of humor. And yeah, we've known each other ever since. But again, because back then there were no cell phones or
yeah.
way to stay in touch with each other social media wise. So him being in Brampton and me being, in Scarborough, and so, it was just, we didn't know how to reach each other. And then, like I said, the universe kind of just brought us back together, and so it go.
That's so cool. That is amazing. That's cool. Talk about comedy. I think we are kind of mentioned a bit in the beginning. I was talking about the consent and all that stuff. I wanted to ask, like, do you think comedy has changed due to like cancel culture and everything?
Again,
And
it's changed if you buy into it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
The way I see it is, you can't cancel culture. And also, I'm of that kind of Rasta man kind of thing, is like, you can't cancel something I subscribe to. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
but the way I see it is, if you buy into it, then that's a you problem. But for me, um, I whatever comes out of my mouth comedically or artistically, for me anyway, is going to have intention, and it's going to be purposeful. So whatever it is I choose to say, it's going to be something that I'm willing to argue, and I'm willing to have a conversation about. But I'm not going to pander or try to validate your feelings by changing my feelings. And if you want to change my feelings about what it is, then we will have a conversation about it, and we'll either agree, or you'll agree, or we'll agree to disagree. But you can't cancel something that, is a God-given talent. And whether you hire me or don't hire me, I'm still going to be funny, and I'll still find some way to get my art out there, so
I like
it
that
is what it
answer.
is. I'm sure it has changed, but for me it's just status quo, and I'm just a more mature artist, is what I
Mhm.
think, from my
Yeah,
perspective. And I can only speak for me, and I only
yeah,
will
that's true.
speak for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, because I just the reason why I wanted to ask you that because I thought you were like the perfect person to ask just because I mean I love comedians, I love comedy. Yeah, I watch like every type of comedian out there. And I see like, sometimes I'll see something in a stand-up and they have to go back and apologize for that.
Yeah,
So just like it's just so interesting just to I like what you said. You stand by what you say because you are a comedian and
yeah.
that's the whole reason why you came up with that joke. It was funny too.
Correct. And at the time too, like the way I see it is like it's crazy to me that, people will go back in time and be like, you said this 15 years ago. But I'm like, that's how people spoke. That's how people thought. And the way the world works is, people evolve. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna, you remember Igor from three three caves down when he hit the dinosaur on the head with the club? That's animal abuse. And I was like, yeah,
Mm,
that's what they did back in the prehistoric times. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So the world evolves, and I don't think people want to give people the benefit of the doubt that they can evolve as people. And that's the saddest thing in the world to me, that you would, because I always find more often than not, if you do stuff like that, like cancel somebody, you don't know what their reaction to that is going to be mentally or spiritually, and they might end up being worse people as opposed to just kind of just have a conversation, man. Just talk to me, don't talk at me. And the thing with cancel culture too that is I get why some people apologize and backtrack is because most people, not most, a lot of people or performers, whether it be actors or comedians or singers or just whoever in general, sometimes view things through the lens of money and
Yeah.
economy and financial, and they don't want to lose what they think, somebody else is giving them. And if you provide for yourself and you're the one, then I don't want to have to, I don't want that to be the parameters in which I live in. I don't want to have to live in this financial box.
Yeah.
Money comes when you do right. So that's what it is for me anyway.
So I see you on breakfast television. How did that happen? How'd you get on breakfast television?
Again, the way my life goes sometimes is very Forrest Gumpy.
Hmm.
So a guy by the name of Rob Hines, shout out to Rob Hines, who's a fantastic producer on television as well. I had worked with like maybe 20 years ago, and he was covering for a producer on breakfast television. And this is over the pandemic, by the way, when there was
Yeah.
no live correspondence, and everything was via Zoom and that kind of thing. And they had a segment, and they were looking for some kind of comedic levity, to go. It was about the royal family. It was about Meghan and Harry. And they pulled me in, and it went well. And then they asked me, would you be interested in doing another one? And I was like, I'd be crazy to say no. Plus, things were slowly opening back out as far as restrictions. And then maybe a couple months after that, things actually opened back up. And they were like, would you be interested in doing live shows? Live correspondence. And I was like, yeah. Um, and again, just kind of snowballed into what it became. I enjoy doing it. They enjoy me doing it. And again, part of that whole thing for me, I think the success of it is people actually get to see my real comedic sensibilities. I'm not trying to be the media guy. I'm not trying to be the, hi, we're here at the winery and tell us about, I want to be as natural as possible because I almost feel like I represent people's natural curiosity. So I don't want to just be, I'm not the media guy. I was never trained as a media guy. That's for them back in the studio to handle. And I
But you're
just want
very
to,
natural then. You're really
yeah,
good because
yeah.
like I said, I watch breakfast television, so I see you. I've seen you for a while now. So no, you're really good. And I mean, like it's
I
not like
appreciate
you
it.
don't seem like it's foreign to you. You seem like you're. I mean, you've been doing it for a couple of years now too.
But
So
coincidentally, the pandemic is, I think, what made that comfortable because the shows that I had to perform were to avoid. While I can see you on the screen, I don't have any real energy
oh
that comes back. And the
wow,
worst one to perform in was what's it called? Microsoft MS,
Teams?
not MS,
Is it Teams?
Teams. The one where it's just you and a black box and you see nobody, you hear nothing, you just see
Ah,
comments on the side. So literally performing into a void. And I got comfortable with the uncomfortableness of what that is. And so I have to kind of create my own world and energy. And when it opens up, so it's literally just me and a cameraman. there's no audience, there's no studio, there's
Mhm.
no, and it's just me and the cameraman and whoever I'm talking to. So what I'm trying to do is create a little world for whoever's in this little cocoon, and hopefully it translates to you at home, because I know how tough it is to get up at that hour of the morning, because I'm up at that hour of the morning,
Yeah.
to make sure that you can get out with a smile on your face, to sit in traffic, to then go to work. So I don't want it to be boring. I don't want it to be editorial. I want it to be enlightening at best for those 5 or 4 or 3 or 2 minutes that I'm on screen. And hopefully you take that energy with you, which is why I start the segment with "Morning, people," because
Yeah.
it kind of reminds me of home, of being in the islands. And people say, "Hey, morning, morning, neighbor," and then you already, "Hey, good morning," So that's kind of what I'm trying to pass through the screen, is exchange energy, and that's all it is.
Well, that's nice. How long have you been out there? How long have you been doing it?
So come August of this year would be 3 years,
Was it?
but it
Oh my God, 3 years?
but it
It seems
but
like
it
it's longer
passes it,
though.
it passes super quickly. Yeah,
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 but
yeah,
I actually thought it was longer. I guess
yeah.
I've been watching it all
No,
throughout the pandemic. I thought it
yeah.
was, wow. Well, then congratulations.
I'm just endearing to people.
So we went through the questions really quickly, and I had 10 minutes left in the call. So I thought, I gotta make use of this. So I asked him if I could ask him anything, and he was totally game with that.
It's up to you. If there's anything off the top of your dome that you want to throw out there, feel free. I'm an open book. I got zero things to hide, and I enjoy conversation. So, if there's anything that you've always wanted to ask, please feel free. I got no.
Okay. You going to Caribana?
No. Uh,
Well, that was an
but the
easy
reason,
question, though.
so the
The reason I asked that is because,
the reason I don't go down to the parade, and I don't go down to Carabana, has nothing to do with Carabana itself.
uh-huh.
It's just that I'm someone who goes to Trinidad and Tobago for Carnival pretty much every year, probably for the last 25 years. And they understand, when you go home for Carnival, people understand the etiquette and the culture of Carnival. And they
Hmm.
understand that when you buy a costume and you don't have a costume, you stay out the band and you let the people who pay their
Oh.
money to play and have a good time express themselves, and you just appreciate it from the side. You know what I mean? But here in Toronto, all the people who just think it's this free for all ruin the vibe and ruin the energy and ruin the creation. Like, people don't realize that mass bands and mass camps and all the tireless and hours of that goes into, and the tedious things of sticking beads and feathers and gluing and burning your fingers with a hot glue gun, how much of that blood, sweat, and tears goes into trying to make sure that the culture stays alive, because everything now is so disposable, as far as like products, and is like, I could just buy this, I'll go to Amazon or I'll go to Temu or whatever. But they don't realize that some of your history and your culture is literally embedded in these giant flowers and beads and makeup and all that. And all it takes is, you know 2 or 3 fools to open up this piece of a fence and rush in like floodwater and
Hmm.
ruin everything. And I don't like to witness that, because it hurts my heart, because I know what people could get out of that if they let that happen. So I go, not because I don't dig Carabana, I just don't dig that other side that comes with it, because people just don't know. So that's why I don't go.
Okay, so I have another question.
Ah, let's go to all the fets though.
Okay,
Go
that's
all the
good.
party.
Okay, you are a Trini.
I like
Okay,
the
because
party.
I was born here and I am of Trini parentage, I've never experienced
You have
Carnival.
to go. You have to
How?
go.
What am I missing out? What do I expect? What do I expect?
So I've only figured out a recent way of kind of sort of getting a description of, like, people ask me, what's it like? Why do you go? Why do you go every year? The reason I go every year is, if you've ever listened to anybody talk about their experience with ayahuasca, that is how I describe Carnival. It is a spiritual, for me anyway, it's a very spirit. And again, yes, there's fete and parties and you get drunk and all that kind of stuff, but people don't realize the revolutionary
Mhm.
roots of what Carnival is. Carnival isn't just about partying. it's about the pushback of like even like with the steel pan and the drums, like we weren't allowed to play drums because the slave owners used to think that that's how they were communicating, and they used to try to suppress all that. And Carnival came out of like the Camboulet riots and making fun of like the masqueraders, the rich masqueraders, and we, you know, it was us making fun of them, and then it just evolved into this thing where it's the freest, it's the freest slaves could feel is Carnival. There's a spirit, there's an energy, there's a vibe. There's an essence. It's palpable. It comes up through the earth. It comes through the music. It comes through the like you. It's literally palpable. And every year that I go, I get something different out of it because I it's like a weird kind of soca meditation. It's a weird when you let it in and you
So
really
make it.
experience it. Because a lot of people just go on, oh, I just want to go to all the fests and I just want to go to all the parties and I just want to wind up and I just want to da da da. But when you go to like this year, I went up into the hills of Paramin, which is like on the northwest side of Trinidad, and it's like these steep hills where the only way to really get up there is like the old time Jeeps because regular cars can't go up that
Oh,
steep.
okay.
And they have the Blue Devil, and the
Mm.
Blue Devils is like you're covered in this blue paint and they got like these wired bended wings, and it's not even music, it's like all these aluminum cookie tins, and that's the music and the rhythm and the ping pang pang pang, and they just and so you I don't know if you've ever heard the song Pay the Devil, you pay him man, just pay the devil. So the you'd have to pay the devil so that they would move, or else they would stop you from, you know, enjoying the like there's a whole history behind it. And so it's when you see those things and you realize that it comes from somewhere, and it's not just the economy of Carnival. It's not just the
Yeah.
economy of going to a fete. And you realize there's stick fighting involved, and wire bending, and fire breathing, and limbo, and blue devils. And you realize that it comes from somewhere, and that you come from somewhere, you know, that you feel it in here. And when you feel it in here, everything changes. Everything changes.
That's so nice. Oh my God.
So you
That
have to.
was,
Don't even talk about Juve. Woo! It'll change your life.
I know it will be. I know it
You
will
can
be.
pick and choose. You can pick and choose how many parties you go to. You can pick and choose how many parties you go to. Because back in the day when I was young, it's like we go in every party and no sleep until Ash Wednesday. You know what I mean? So that's why songs are funny to me. Like we go in right down till we lie down. You know what I mean? It's like no sleep for Carnival. Like, but you'd be surprised how your adrenaline and the energy and the spirit of your
Mm.
people embedded in the country, embedded in the earth, rise up every year around that time, and will keep you awake. You'll be surprised, man. Like your spirit will be so awakened that you don't feel tired until you stop Ash Wednesday, and then you sleep for like 2 weeks straight and you're like, what happened? Did that actually happen? So it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful experience. I try not to miss it, you know, and it's made me happy that every year pretty much since my kids were born, and they're teenagers now, that we take them down and
Oh, nice. So
and
they've experienced it
gladly.
then. Your kids, I was going to ask you that. Your kids experienced it then.
So yes and no. They've played Kitty's Carnival a few times when
Yeah.
they were really little and when they were slightly older. But you know, we've never taken them out for like Juve and stuff like that. But we've taken them to like Queens Park, Savannah, to watch like King and Queen, like with the
Mm.
big costumes, and they could see the movement and all that kind of stuff. So we definitely want to make sure from an early age that they got to experience knowing that, again, that they come from somewhere, and that nobody outside of their culture can make them feel less than because, well, where you come from? And it's like, where do I come from?
Mm.
Reds, let me tell you, real creative, real, you know. So
Oh, nice.
you can't make me feel less than anybody. Crazy.
But okay, I want to ask just because I'm a Trini. I want to know what your favorite Trini dish is, just because I'm a foodie
Mm.
at,
It's
in
a
a writer.
combination. It's a combination. Two things. One, I think because it's my Indian side, I love dal. I love dal. But if I had to nail down something I could live off for the rest of my life, it would be roti. Easy. Whether it's wrap roti, paratha, bus up shots, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? You name it.
what's
Like
up shop
I
for
could just
me?
you know what I mean? So it could be beef, goat, chicken, pumpkin, potato. Yeah, I mean, straight curry, I mean, you name it, So, but there's so much that I love. I love there's so much food that I love. Like, I love, I love cold tongue dumpling and big dumpling, and I mean,
Oh, the big one. Oh,
the
because
big
they're so
one.
big. Oh,
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
never
I
heard that
love
terminology
that.
yet. Okay.
I love buljol. I love,
Yeah,
I
same
mean,
here.
corned beef and rice, stewed chicken, kalaloo, macaroni, like you name it. I love, I mean, palori.
Yeah, I like Polaroids. Yeah,
I
I like
love.
everything you just said. Everything. That's basically what I eat. That's my
So
food. That's
yeah,
my
it's a
food.
lot of I just love our food because there's so much and there's so many different cultural influences in our food and again, I feel like I know that I come from somewhere because it we're very worldly and international in Trinidad, but just very wayward. But I love it.
Okay, actually, one last question. So, where can we see you next? What else? What are you up to?
Um,
What to promote?
so the only thing I would really truly promote is I plan on launching I have a few guests lined up. I plan on launching a podcast that people have been trying to get me to do for the longest little while, and I finally agreed to it. So, but this summer, because the last few summers have been so busy for me, like I was at Just for Laughs last year, recorded a television gala with Russell Peters, and was in Hawaii and San Jose and Florida and all over. Like literally, I've just been like performing all over the world, and I haven't enjoyed my summer in so many years, and I love Toronto in the summer. And I just wanted to get a piece of that. So the shows that I'm doing are very sparingly, spread out so that
Yeah,
make sure I at least have some kind of income coming in.
yeah.
But for the most part, I want to concentrate on this new podcast. And the working title is either stand up, sit down, because I'm a stand up and you sit down with me, or I was gonna call it chat to me. So, because whenever I answer the phone, that's what I say, chat to me. So I might call it that. And it's just me basically talking to people. And because I love life and because I like life, I'm still trying to evolve and be a better person. And I figure the better I can be, the better energy I can put out, and that way, hopefully energy gets exchanged and like in the 70s, the commercial, and you tell two friends and they tell two
Yeah.
friends and so on and so on. So just trying to make the world better one joke at a time. And I also have a clothing line called Hipster, Island Hipster. That's what I call
You know
myself.
that? Okay, that
Yeah.
I did not know. Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, cool.
So, and the basically our motto or my motto is spread love, walk good, practice happy, and that's all I ever want people to take away from me and my comedy and in life and all that kind of good stuff. So, yeah,
Okay,
that's
great.
it.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking and telling me more about you, getting to know you. So, can you give us some of your details? How can we get in contact if you want to or
I
find out?
always say that the most immediate way to get in contact with me or to even see what's going on in my life, because there's always, I'm a family man, I'm a comedian, and all that kind of stuff, is social media. And the best place I always tell people is to go check my IG. I'm actually quite proud of my IG, which is Jean Paul Comedy, or Jean Paul, as my mother calls me. So check out Jean Paul Comedy on social media, on X or Twitter or whatever you call it, as well as Facebook, if that's still a thing. For all the old people out there, check out Facebook, or the Facebook, as all others call it.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
and yeah, it's the easiest way to get in touch with me. Or you could check me on, Breakfast Television from time to time. But so,
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
no,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. First of all, I might be a bit biased, but the Trini accent is by far one of my favorite accents. So, yes, talking to John Paul for the past 30 minutes was life. I love how he was able to break down his comedy routine and then educate me on what Carnival is like in Trinidad. It was an absolute delight with John Paul. Looking forward to hearing his podcast. Thanks for listening to this episode, and I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. Take care. Thanks for joining me for the latest episode of Words with Michelle, the podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, I'd love for you to like and subscribe and give a review on Spotify. Just a reminder, if you have any questions or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can email me at michelle@wordsofmichelle.com. You can also email me if you have any questions about how to sponsor the show or sponsor an episode. Thanks for listening. Until next time, bye.